Hey, wanna see something? That's a Sword Stance Extreme Speed Snorlax winning a match in the OMWC, the Other Metagame World Cup, and the Metagame Inheritance, a permanent other metagame available on Showdown that allows for players to have any Pokemon inherent from any other Pokemon, having that Pokemon take on the other's move pool and abilities, while still keeping their own stats and typing. One interesting result of this? Snorlax becoming one of the tier's top used Pokemon. But why? Well, for the most part because of its access to Regenerator and pivoting options from mons like Mienshao and Cyclizar, letting it spin off hazards or just generally prove itself as an annoying, hard to kill threat. So then, what the hell is this? Yeah, Sword Stance Extreme Speed Snorlax. It doesn't seem too threatening till you realize that, with some decent support, Snorlax can actually make a pretty incredible sweeper for a well-rounded hyper-offense team. And that's the exact kind of team Snorlax finds itself on here, with a bulky Corviknight utilizing Impidimp Inheritance to set screens, and at the end of the match, after everyone else had fainted, use Snorlax as an endgame Sword Stance E-Speed sweeper that successfully wraps up the match with a Reflect on its side to cover its lesser physical bulk. Not that it matters, as with E-Speed, it loses any reason to really fear the final mon Anaconda has in the back, a Cinderace inherited Barraskewda. Now let's see, what else do we got here? Oh, yeah, here. Forretress sucks. Most of the time. This is STABmons. It's here where any Pokemon can use any move that correlates with their own natural typings, or that of their previous evolutions, which makes for some fun jank like Salt Cure, Shore Up, Parting Shot Tyranitar, which is essentially just Garganacl if it got pivoting options, and Sandstorm to give itself a guaranteed Assault Vest boost at all times. But in the OMWC, Forretress found itself making an appearance for the first time in a long while, with some decent viability. What's that asterisk? Well, it did lose its match in the World Cup, but this doesn't mean the set itself is completely invalidated. The set relies on three core things: a Custap Berry, Metal Burst, and Sticky Webs. So let's cover these one at a time. Sticky Webs is pretty obvious, being used as a starter for hyper offense so that slower mons don't have to worry about setting up or attacking as much, and opposing fast, fragile mons are more scared and threatened than they typically are. Metal Burst is a unique move, being a 0 damage move unless the user of it has taken damage this turn, in which it takes its damage taken, multiplies it by 1.5 times, and then typically just flat kills whatever it's looking at, especially with the help of Forretress's ability, Sturdy. Next is a Custap Berry, which triggers at the start of a turn if the using Pokemon happens to be at low HP, in which case it gives this Pokemon +1 priority on all of its actions. Now this set is very abusable by knowing players, so it requires some good support, but it's an interesting set that can be really annoying to fight in the right players and teams' hands. Okay, this next one is a bit of a stretch because it's not the worst Pokemon typically, it's just, well, it's niche in the tier it's in. A Calyrex Ice Rider and Mix and Mega. Mix and Megas is another permanent other metagame available on Pokemon Showdown, with its unique trait being that you can mix around Megas. See this Barraskewda, Lopunite. It gained the fighting type, and now it can hit Gengar, because it also gained the Lopunite ability, Scrappy, as well as the stat changes from Lopunite, which includes +60 attack and +30 speed, turning Barraskewda into an extremely fast and hard-hitting fighting water-typed pivot option. Though honestly, you don't really see Barraskewda be used super often because, well, Urshifu Rapid Strike exists, who with Metagrossite gains an insane +40 speed to its base stat, and not just this number, but to this number, which gives it a 1 less speed than Zamazenta, as well as granting Urshifu the ability Tough Claws, which boosts Surging Strike's damage by 1.3 times for every single attack. But amongst all of these extremely strong threats, there is Calyrex Ice Rider. And before you say that makes sense, any big legendary would be good with an insane Mega Stone to boot. I mean, hey, Lugia got banned from holding stones just a little bit ago, and saying he's a low tier legendary might be underselling it a bit. The reason this is kind of niche is because Calyrex Ice Rider can't hold a stone. He is, much like Lugia, now banned from holding one. And while this would be a death sentence for most Pokemon, even legendaries barring a few typically more bulky walls like Eternatus and Lunala, Ice Rider does carve a very small niche out as a bulky attacker, able to break through some very specifically hard to kill Pokemon, and outspeed some specific ones, such as Camerupt users on rare occasions. To talk about how chilling this is, let's remember back to Lugia. He was insanely good for using stones like Absolite, Sableye, and more. With this, he was placed, obviously, pretty high tier, and now that he can't use stones, he isn't even on the viability ranking chart anymore. Calyrex, though, makes a stand for itself due to its pretty incredible typing for the tier, which alongside a Choice Band, its signature move Glacial Lance, and a decent player can allow for Calyrex to make some decent swap-ins and make either trades, or just destroy opposing Eternatus, and unlike most Eternatus killers, swapping to Regieleki with Altarionite isn't going to stop it. In fact, it'll probably just kill your Regieleki. Another example is the same with Eternatus, but swapping to Corviknight or Hippowdon, no matter who you're making a pivot into, Calyrex Ice Rider will still just hit really fucking hard. And sometimes, that's all you really need on a team. Almost any ability. I want you to take a guess what its special other metagame effect is. Don't actually guess. Who are we covering this? Well, it's not as niche, but I love this Pokemon, and nor is this Pokemon currently in its heyday within the tier. Which is why this is actually a history class. Welcome to the first lesson. Lesson 1, Walking Wake is really strong. Lesson 2, it wasn't banned for a very long time. And Lesson 3, Empoleon. I'm talking about Empoleon. This Pokemon is pretty fascinating. It's not the best wall, but it has a few very specific traits that enable it to really help out a team, especially during the Walking Wake dominance era. The best of these traits is its shockingly good support move pool. It gets Roost for healing, Stealth Rocks, Flip Turn for some pivoting, and finally, due to the commonality of Water Absorb Heatran around this time to also beat Walking Wake, Earthquake, which, while it doesn't OHKO Heatran, it does do some really good damage, which Heatran players don't want to take, because again, Lesson 1, Walking Wake strong. As such, players don't want their Walking Wake wall to just die turn 1 to an Empoleon of all things. But what about the tier's namesake? What ability did it use? Well, it kinda cares a bit less than most other Pokemon on this topic, but that doesn't mean it's not important. In its peak, it did run 2 or so specific abilities, mostly ones that didn't hook in with its other teammates. So as such, it ran 2 lesser ran specially defensive abilities, at least for teams packing Empoleon in the first place, being Bulletproof, which protected Empoleon from moves like Shadow Ball, Energy Ball, and most prominently, Aura Sphere. Or it ran Volt Absorb, typically alongside a Corviknight on the team, so that in the case of electric attackers overwhelming Corviknight, it could just stop them. And as Earthquake was ran for Heatran, it also was pretty effective against most electric type attackers. And if it wasn't, then typically the opposing electric type couldn't really make progress on Empoleon either, like Zapdos, whose combo of Weather Ball, Thunder, and Hurricane can't do real damage to Empoleon who resists each attack, even with Primordial Sea up. This would be, obviously, disadvantageous as well, because allowing Empoleon to stay on the field for free can mean for the Empoleon player, free Stealth Rocks, and for the Zapdos player, extreme frustration because removing hazards was really scary at this time period, as most hazard removers didn't really like the look of a certain prehistoric water fountain, whoever that might be. Anyways, this video is actually stretching out pretty long, and I don't really got the time with all the editing I put in these, so let's wrap it up with one more niche tech. Let me see here. Oh yeah, so shot punching is using the fact that in Ultra Kill, shotgun shots actually have a slightly slower travel speed than typical bullets, which is to say, they aren't hit scan. What's that mean for you? Punches parry, and your shots exist in front of you for just a few milliseconds. Take a guess on the name. Shot, punch, parry. This turns your shots into explosive rounds that do way more damage than the standard shotgun shot, and you don't really need to be as close when using it either. So utilizing it right, you can get some pretty sick combos off with shotgun mode swapping included with it, making the combo look like this. Anyways, this other metagame is on Steam. It's $20 called Ultra Kill. Yes, before you ask, Iron Valiant is still the meta. Look at this thing. Unbeatable.